your fantasies come
True. Fantasies.
come true.
So what we're going to do with the rest of this message is I want to be able to give healthy rules of thumb on how to view singleness and how to live singleness with a holy heart. For those that are watching online, I'm taking time every so often to do this because oftentimes this is not discussed because a lot of the audiences are often married. But I think this is really important. Even if you are married, this is going to help us with our kids, our grandkids, people that we know, and give greater perspective to ourselves and our past. So here are some pitfalls of singleness. So some are called to be single, but there's pitfalls, and that means there's bad reasons to stay single, but there's also pitfalls even if we're in our singleness. One is unhealthy motives for staying single. Singleness is a gift that we see in 1 Corinthians 7. It's a gift. But unhealthy reasons to stay single is something that causes big problems. For example, here are some unhealthy reasons. Selfishness. I don't want to give up whatever it is. I don't want to sacrifice my career. I don't want to sacrifice my time. This is also a poor reason not to have more kids. I want more time for myself. I don't want to, no, all of this is selfishness. I want to accomplish my dreams. There's a selfishness. That is not a good reason to stay single. Lust. I just want to keep sleeping with as many people as I can. A disdain for the opposite sex. This is a big one. You can sleep with the opposite sex and still have a disdain for the opposite sex. These are really unhealthy reasons to stay single. Another one is a narrow concept of attraction. Attraction's important. It's not unimportant. We'll talk about more of that in a second. But one of the issues, especially nowadays in the swipe left or swipe right culture, is everyone's looking for 10s. 10s in attractiveness. A 1 out of 10. 10 is the best, 1 is the worst. If you don't know what that is, there we go. Another pitfall is to have a narrow view of sex. Sex, by the way, is not just intercourse. All right? That is a new modern definition of sex. In biblical times, sex was the entire meal. So I've talked to singles about this before, and I'll give the analogy. You have the appetizer, the main dish, and then the dessert. All of it was meant to be a part of the sexual relationship. And the funny part is them trying to figure out which is the appetizer, which is the main meal, and which is the dessert. I'll let you guys figure that out. Maybe next week when we talk about sex, we'll talk more about that. But next is ignore the age issues. Again, pastorally, if you are single and older and you end up getting married again, maybe your spouses have passed away or something along those lines, the older you are, or perhaps you just haven't gotten married and it's been a while, but you still have a desire to get married. The older you are, the more openness you need to have earlier. If you're not going to get married, then it's something, if you don't want marriage, you need to communicate that up front. And this is not going to be popular, but if you're too young to marry, there really is no reason to date. There's no reason to get hormones out of... What ends up happening is, you get people given this advice, and the person who's the expert of giving all the young people advice is like, oh, look, I've dated 10 people. You got to listen to me. Why? Because you're the worst at staying in a relationship? You just had 10 relationships. It's practice of failure. Those who start dating, statistics are clear. Those who start dating before they're 16, every horrible statistic goes up. We're talking about poverty, we're talking about STDs, we're talking about divorce, we're talking about drug usage, we're talking about success in life. Every statistic that really scares parents, they start dating before they're 16, major problems. They wait until they're 18 or older, all of those things begin to level out. Now you might sit there and say, well, that's unrealistic. I get it. In our culture, that's just like unheard of. But then we have to ask the question, what's the higher value? On one hand, we set ourselves up to be emotionally scarred for the rest of our life because if you go through counseling and you talk with people, a good portion of the things that people are dealing with are things that happen in the early stages of life. Or the best shot to have a quality life and healthy relationships going forward. Now, I understand young people have a mind of their own, but if you're parents, try to develop that relationship and fight for what you can fight for. Prayer is a big deal. But just highlighting that these are realities. Next one is a pitfall, is being emotionally involved with a non-believer, which we'll talk about more in just a moment. Next pitfall is make isolated decisions with no input from spiritually mature people. The Bible highlights that there's wisdom in wise counselors, that fools don't listen to counsel. So Sharon and Nathan, her on the front rows over here, Sharon and Nathan are really good examples of this. When they started dating, they actually were part of Red Church for like 5 years. They were just friends, serving together in ministry. And then all of a sudden, Nathan takes me to lunch. Before he says anything, I go, yeah, so when are you going to ask Sharon out? He's like, how did you know? The Lord told me. Ended up working out. Now they have 2 kids. But they really did things the right way. They had an accountability couple that asked them the tough questions. And they actually listened and talked to this couple. So key thing here, don't become a pseudo spouse to someone who won't commit. If you're given all some of the best parts of a relationship and there is no commitment, you need to run for the hills.